I'll wait for a few people to fill the room and I'll begin to tell a story. Let's see what we got here. All right, I'm going to begin. I'm going to talk about how accidentally I manifested an original Macintosh Portrait Display, which was designed by the original team members. And it was, let me finish telling the story. Here it is right here. When when I was a teenager, I was heavy into computers. And let's see what we have here. When I was a teenager, I was heavy into computers. My father used to take me to what was called the Amiga store in a place called San Rafael, California. And I used to drive up there. Well, my father would drive and I would ride with him. And I would buy games like King's Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, Police Quest. I shouldn't have had Leisure Suit Larry, but I did. My father didn't know. But I bought, this particular day, I was headed to the Amiga store to buy Police Quest. And this is before the computer, this monitor was ever released. It was a prototype. And I went there, I used to go there and I'll get a huge PC World magazine. And I saw the PC World magazine and it spoke about how they were working on this and it was going to be phenomenal and a game changer. And I used to sit there and just stare at the PC World magazine article about this new thing that Apple was working on. And this was a long time ago. This was in the 80s. This is when the original members were working on these projects. And this one particular time, coming back from the Amiga store, I told my father, stop the car. He stopped the car and he yelled at me, asked me why I did it. I said, I seen that in the magazine before. And he said, well, it was two men. They were sitting on, fold out lawn chairs and they were in front of a house. And I asked them, was it for sale? They said, yes. And they said, and I asked them how much. I said, I don't have the money that they asked for, but I had $80. They said, we'll sell it to you. And I said, is it stolen? They're like, no, it's not stolen. It belongs to us. And so they sold it to me for $80. I got in the vehicle and I went home. There was nothing for me to plug it into. It was a graphics card and a monitor, not the complete computer. It was just the graphics, this elongated monitor here, and a graphics card in a sleeve. And I just used to plug it in the wall and touch the screen, a little static on it. It's all I could do with it because there was nothing for you to hook it up to. It was just advanced. I took it back to the Amiga store, asked my father if he would take me there. I told him I would give him gas money. He said yes. He took me back there. And when he did, I showed the people at the Amiga this. And I said, when I left here the last time buying Police, there were two men sitting on their lawn and they sold it to me. And the other guy said, it's probably stolen. I said, no, it's not stolen. They told me it wasn't. And they looked very sincere when they told me it wasn't stolen. So I went back to my home after there was nothing we could do. The men at the Amiga store told me, I just wanted money. They told me, they said, it's worth a small fortune. We don't know, how much this would cost because they spent a lot of money on this. Apple did as a whole creating it. And I don't think the guys even knew, exactly where it was from because we just didn't know what to do with it. I took it home. They said, maybe you can put it up for sale. So I put an article in the back of the PC World magazine and I got a phone call. And the phone call was the original two men who sold me this computer. And I want anyone who knows Apple to tell the original people, if they're still alive, so they can corroborate my story, because I'm telling you the truth. And they called and said, we need that back. We're in trouble. And I said, well, how much money do you have? They didn't even have my money that I gave them. And so they said, we need that back. We're in trouble. And I said, hey, I paid for that fair and square. Remember, I'm a teenager. I just know I worked, washed dishes, and worked hard for that. And did whatever yard work. And I said, no, that's mine. And they said, we need that back. And I'm going to tell you what, like a little bit later, I got a knock at the door. And it was two Mr. Andersons. They were like, oh, we're here to get the property. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, the monitor. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm thinking they're going to cut me a check. And I said, are you going to write me a check for it? They said, no, it is property of Apple Computers. Remember, this is in the 80s. They were like, this is property of Apple Computers. And the way my house was designed, there was the front door, the kitchen, and then a bar where my father's recliner was and his phone. And you couldn't see him. He couldn't see them either, but he could hear them talking. And they said, the two men said, we're not going to give you anything for it. It is property of Apple Computers. And my father jumped up and said, you're going to give him something for it because he worked hard for this. And they said, we're not obligated to do anything. It is stolen property. And my father said, and I said, I didn't steal anything. They're like, no, we know you didn't steal it. And my father said, if you're not going to give him something, you're going to at least give him an explanation. They said, we don't owe you any explanation. But one of the men was at least decent enough to tell me. He said, the two men worked at Apple and they felt they were not properly compensated. So they took the monitor and graphics card. When they were unable to sell it to anyone else, they sold it to me. So so this is the exact monitor. This was designed by the original people. So it had to be to this day, I don't know their names like that, but it had to be the original men of Apple who worked on the project. They said the two men worked on the project and they felt they were not properly compensated. So they took the monitor and graphics card. And when they couldn't sell it, they just sold it to me. And they sold it to me for $80. And I manifested that without even knowing. Me sitting there just staring at that PC World magazine. That's another one of my Forrest Gump moments. And I got plenty of those. I don't have to lie about anything. That's why I want Apple to step up, because it had to be the two original people who took it, because they had to have been arguing about it. It was in California. My father was he was a celebrity. He was on TV all the time. So we would always be in those type of areas. I even was lucky to I'll tell you another story too of getting to see the first browsers. And that's another story. I'll tell that on another day. But that's just one of the things that happens with manifestation and how powerful manifestation is, to tell people we manifest the environment around us through our thoughts, and our thoughts become our actions. I know people hear it all the time, and I know that people may do it sometimes, but I'm telling you how to do it quickly. I've even manifested things where it came so fast, almost like the very day, and I was like, what the heck? And a person told me, hey, I thought about you when I sent this, and what it was scared me so much because it was just something that I just thought about, but it came. But yeah, that's something that one of those stories I thought I would tell someone, because we sit here and we want better for ourselves, but that starts with what is within, and within will surely come without and form into our environment. I don't have a whole lot of time today because I'm very tired. I spent a lot of time in over 100-degree heat today preparing. It's grape harvesting time. And I may go out there and show you guys some grape harvesting another day. It's dark now. But I want to spend some time and tell you guys that story. It's a funny story, and will be even cool if I could forward this to Apple. Because if they're still alive, those two men have to remember what happened, because they had to have been arguing within the facility. But, it also let me know, too, that to see the two men that came to the door, these men were clearly from the government. And that lets me know that when you have these technology companies, they must be in direct correlation. And remember, this is still the early, I'm going to say like maybe, I won't say early 80s. It's closer to the end of the 80s, like 87, 88 period of time. Because even on this article here that I've seen, like I was really kind of emotional about it a little bit, not crying, but like within here, because it reminded me of my father who's no longer with me. And I just remembered, I had not seen this since I was a teenager. And it was a really, really unique experience. I'd like to thank everybody who showed up here today. I'm going to do more videos with regard to manifestation and even other things of that nature, if you guys are interested in it, because I have a deep understanding, I feel, of certain things of that nature. And I want to share with you guys more books, more rare books, and other things that will help you to manifest better, if you'd like me to do so, I should say. And thank you to everyone who showed up here. It says add a question and answer sticker. Let me see. Let's try it. I've never done this before. It says move. No, I don't have that. Huh. Well, maybe I'll do that another time when I find out more about this feature. I used to do videos on my desktop, but for some strange reason, I'm no longer allowed to do it on there. It only says error whenever I try to get to the stages of producing a video, which is quite strange. But it is what it is. Yeah, I'm glad to be back on here. Yes, definitely. You kind of come at the tail end of the video, but you may have to rewind and catch the video. But I'm going to do more videos and just spend some more time with the people. I like to uplift the people as best way that I possibly can and share some of what I like to think of as wisdom. You folks have a great day, and thank you for coming out, and peace to